Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining the NCAA Initial Eligibility webinar today. My name is Amber Viles. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications for the NCAA Eligibility Center, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Ivory Long and Jansen Raymond. Before we get started, I have just a few quick housekeeping things to note. First, yes, of course, this webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to all registrants. So while we are going to cover quite a lot of information today, you will be able to go back and watch the recording of today's webinar at your own pace. This follow-up email will also include a PDF of today's slide deck, with clickable links. And also, as noted on the previous slide, you can hear us and hopefully you're able to see us, but we can't hear or see you. So please use the Q&A function to ask us any questions throughout today's webinar. We do have a full staff standing by ready to answer your questions directly, so you don't have to wait till that question slide at the end. You can just throw any question you have in the chat. So to start, I'll discuss what the NCAA Eligibility Center is. Ivory will come on and talk about choosing an NCAA school. She'll also talk about certification outcomes for Division I and II. So if you are a junior or senior joining us today, please pay really close attention when Ivory talks about those certification outcomes. Jansen will come on and talk about recruiting. I'll come back out, we'll discuss resources, and of course, take your questions live. So what is the NCAA Eligibility Center? The Eligibility Center, or the EC, you might hear us say, is a unit within the NCAA. It's what I like to call the front door of the NCAA. And what I mean by that is that it's your family, your coaches, your high school counselors that recognize your hard work in the classroom and your passion for your sport. They're going to help you get to us, and then we're going to meet you out front and evaluate and certify you for Division I, Division II, and in some cases, Division III competition. Because if you want to compete at that next level, getting certified by the EC is not an option. So the better our collaboration is together, the more empowered you're going to be to take advantage of the opportunity of playing sports while getting your college education. Now let's discuss choosing an NCAA school. So here's a divisional breakdown that shows how the NCAA team makes a big impact on students globally. We service over 1,000 colleges and universities. We help over 500,000 student athletes. And keep in mind, we do this with a team of about 50 people for the EC staff. So we are a small team, but we sure are a mighty team. Here's a list of the NCAA's championship sports. We currently host 90 national championships. That's almost 54,000 student athletes participating in NCAA championships each year. And of course, when you get the slide deck with the clickable links for this webinar, that emerging sports, that gray box that you see on your screen, you can click that and it will always take you to the most updated list of all of our emerging sports. Now I'm going to hand things over to Ivory Long. Ivory is the Assistant Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships, and she's going to discuss choosing an NCAA school.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you for letting us join you during your evening. One of the things that we want to provide you is some steps to look at when choosing an NCAA school. We want this to be an easy process for you. And so when looking at an NCAA school, we want you to find the best fit for you. You are going to be spending the next 4 to 5 years of your collegiate career at this college or university. And so we just want to make sure that it's the perfect fit for you. So some things that you can look at, and all of these things can be found on the NCAA college or university's website. We want you to look at the school size. If you thrive better in a smaller school setting, make sure you look at that school size, looking at the teacher or the professor to student ratio. We want to make sure that you are able to learn and get your questions answered and have a great academic experience. School location, if you want your family and friends to come see you, choosing the right NCAA school that's in the right area is a great idea. If you're in the South and then going to a school in the West Coast may not give your family and friends that opportunity. So looking at the school location is very important. Once you get a copy of this slide deck, that at the bottom, there's a link that says interactive map. You can click that link and it's going to show you all of Division 1, 2, and 3 schools and where they are located. So you get a visual of where that school that you're interested in or that school that's recruiting you is. Next thing to look at is, does that school have your major or minor? The cost of attendance, admission requirements, all of these things are very important when looking at the right school for you. There are 3 requirements in order to play collegiate sports. One is that you have to meet the requirements of your high school and graduate. Now, keep in mind that all 3 of these requirements have their own set of requirements, and we are here to help support you and give you those requirements so you are knowledgeable throughout this process. The second requirement is that you have to meet the NCAA Eligibility Center requirements, which we will get into throughout this presentation. And then the third requirement is that you have to apply and be admitted into that college or university. Now, this is one important factor that some student athletes don't realize. They think that just because that they get offered a college athletic scholarship, that it's all it takes. We wish it were that easy, but you do have to apply and be admitted before you can compete. So going onto that college's or university's website to see what those admission requirements are. I'm going to highlight one of the differences. One of the differences between the NCAA Eligibility Center and college admission requirements for some schools is that SAT and ACT test score requirement. We do get that question a lot and often when we're on the road. The Eligibility Center does not require student athletes to submit an SAT or ACT score. During COVID, we took a pause. In January of 2023, we made it permanent that student athletes did not need to submit those scores. However, we do encourage student athletes to submit those scores or to take the SAT and ACT because you may need them to be admitted into that college or university that you're interested in attending or that's recruiting you. You also may need SAT or ACT scores for class placement and also some scholarships that you may be applying for. Now, this is one of my favorite slides of the presentation, and it shows you just what the student athlete means. Now, student athletes that are listening, your athletic ability is what attracts that coach to you. They know you can play. But there is another aspect when it comes to recruiting and being able to play your sport at the next level. Your academic performance is very, very important. Only about 2% of high school student athletes receive an athletic scholarship, and a smaller percentage of that receive a full athletic scholarship. So making sure that you're getting your academics together and you're getting the work done in the classroom as well in your respective sport. Academics does come into play with recruiting. College coaches do look at how well you are doing in the classroom. If you have a college coach that may be interested in 2 student athletes and athletically on paper, they look the same. The next aspect that college coach is going to look at is your academics. So making sure that you are taking care of business in the classroom as well. This is a visual of what the NCAA eligibility process looks like. So as you look at this track, it shows you things that you should be doing along the way, like registering. What courses do you need to take? Talking to your high school counselor. Speaking of that, it is important that you do know who your high school counselor is. So if you're not sure, I want you to go to your school and find out who they are and then communicate with them that you are wanting to play at the next level. Your school counselor does play a part in this process, just like your family, your coaches, and your athletic director. They are an important piece of the puzzle as well. So once again, once you get this slide deck, you will be able to click the links within this visual to see those resources and to help you along the initial eligibility process. One of the requirements of the NCAA Eligibility Center is registering. Like Amber mentioned at the beginning, it is not an option, it is a requirement. And we do offer 3 types of accounts. The first one is our free profile page account. Now, this is where we would like everyone to start. And in a perfect world, we would love for student athletes to register with a free profile page account as young as 7th and 8th grade. Now, I know you may be thinking that's really early, but the earlier we are getting this information out to student athletes and their families, the easier the process will be. Once you get to high school, your student athlete will know that there is a process that starts once they get to high school. Their academic time clock starts, their athletic time clock starts. So again, the earlier we can get this information out, the better. Once a student athlete decides that they are interested in playing at a Division I or Division II school, this is where we would like them to start. Once those Division I, Division II schools start reaching out and recruiting student athletes, you can transition to a certification account at any time, which we'll get into in the next few slides. This account type is free. Your student athlete will receive their NCAA ID number, which eventually they'll use to give to college coaches during the recruiting process. Our next type of account is the Academic and Amateurism Certification account. Now, this is required to compete at a Division I or Division II school. If your student athlete wants to go on a Division I official visit, if your student athlete wants to sign a national letter of intent and receive an athletic scholarship from a Division I or Division II school, your student athlete will need to be registered with this account type. There is a one-time $100 fee for domestic student athletes and a $160 fee for international student athletes. Our last account type is the amateurism only certification account. And this is required for all international student athletes who want to compete at a Division III school. There is a one-time $70 fee, but again, we do offer that fee waiver for those student athletes who are eligible. And speaking of the fee waiver, if you are unable to pay the registration fee for the NCAA Eligibility Center due to financial considerations, there are a list of criteria that student athletes, if they meet, they will click that fee waiver box after they're done completing the certification accounts. Now, here's another place where your school counselor comes into play. Once your student athlete knows that they meet the requirements and they're eligible for the fee waiver, they'll just click that fee waiver box. They'll go to their school counselor, let them know that they registered with an NCAA certification account and that they believe they are eligible for a fee waiver. Your school counselor will then go in and approve that fee waiver, and then we will waive it on our end. This slide shows what core courses your student athlete needs to take in order to be eligible to play at the NCAA collegiate level. Now, this is another example of the differences from those 3 requirements that I stated at the beginning of the presentation. At your high school, your credits are made up of a combination of core and elective courses in order to meet your credit requirements to graduate high school. Colleges, they look at your entire transcript, which is also made up of core and elective courses. Here at the EC, we only look at the core courses on your high school transcript. So on this slide, you will see core courses are math, science, social studies, world language courses. These are a few examples of what we look at. At the bottom of this slide, there's a link where you can view your high school's approved core course list. If you go to our website, eligibilitycenter.org, there is a link that says high school administrators in the top right-hand corner. Click that, put in your high school, and you will be able to access the core course list for your high school. If you are planning your next semester courses or seeing what courses that you can take, this resource will be very helpful. This slide shows the breakdown of core courses that you have to take at a Division I level to compete. Now, keep in mind that we look at your core courses. So each subject area requires a certain number of years or credits that you will have to meet. English, you will need to have 4 years of English, 3 years of math at the Algebra 1 level or higher, 2 years of science, an extra year of English, math, or science, 2 years of any social studies courses, so U.S. history, world geography, and then 4 years of that others bucket, which includes world language, or if your school offers comparative religion or philosophy courses. Now, one thing to note, If you have any student athletes on the call that has taken a middle school or high school course in middle school, so if you took Algebra 1, Geometry, Spanish, as long as your high school as long as that course is on your high school's approved core course list and your high school will put it on your high school transcript for grade and credit, we will take those courses. So that's another great reason for you to communicate with your school counselor on a regular basis and also talk to them about that process. Our Division I core course time limitation. Now, in order to go Division I, this is another requirement that student athletes do have to meet. So if we have any juniors on the call, this is specifically for you, but freshmen and sophomores, make sure you listen up because you will be a junior at some point. So if you are a junior, 10 of the 16 required courses do need to be completed before you start your 7th semester. 7 of those 10 have to be in English, math, or science. So another great reason to make sure your school counselor knows you're interested so they are putting you in the correct courses. This is an example schedule of what you could take to meet that 16. If you take at least 4 core courses each year, you'll easily meet that core course progression, or what we like to call 10-7, and then you'll really get to that 16 core by time you graduate. Certification outcomes at the Division I and Division II level. We are going to walk through the requirements that your student athlete will need to meet from an academic standpoint in order to compete at a Division I, Division II school. Now, there are 4 outcomes at the Division I level. We are going to talk about 2 through 4. To be a Division I qualifier, that means your student athlete can compete, practice, and receive athletic scholarship their first year. There are 4 different requirements. First, they have to complete the 16 core courses. They have to meet that core course progression, or 10-7 like we like to call it. They have to earn at least a 2.3 core GPA. Now, this is another important factor. We get a lot of student athletes who say, oh, I have a 3.0 GPA, I'm fine, I met that 2.3 easily. That 3.0 may be the student athlete's overall GPA. And remember, here at the EC, we look at their GPA in the core courses. There have been student athletes who have had a 3.0 overall GPA, but a 2.0 core GPA. So we want to make sure that we are, 1, getting scheduled into the right classes, but 2, we are taking care of business in the classroom as well. At the EC, we do have a great resource. If you Google digital GPA calculator, we have an interactive PDF file where student athletes can input the core courses that they've taken, their grade, and their credits, and it will calculate what their core GPA is. The last requirement for a Division I qualifier is that they have to submit proof of graduation. And what that means is that their high school counselor will upload their final high school transcript to their certification account. The next outcome at the Division I level is a Division I academic red shirt. This means that that student athlete didn't meet one or more of the academic requirements to be a qualifier, but they can practice their first term or semester. They can receive an athletic scholarship their first year. Now, this is another reason why it's important to note that academics do matter, because in order for a student athlete to be able to practice that second term or semester, they have to make sure they meet eligibility requirements during that first semester. So again, education is key. 3 requirements for an academic redshirt at the Division I level. You still have to complete the 16 core, have at least a 2.0 core GPA, and submit that proof of graduation. The last outcome of a Division I level is what we call a Division I non-qualifier. This means the student athlete didn't meet any of the academic requirements, so they cannot compete, receive athletic scholarship, or practice their first year. Now, this is why that we do our job and why we love doing our job, to educate student athletes and their families on their requirements, and just letting student athletes understand the importance of the academics so we can eliminate the non-qualifier status. We're going to get into the Division II outcomes next. There are 3 outcomes. We are going to focus on numbers 2 and 3. A Division II qualifier is similar to Division I, but you will see some differences. A Division II qualifier, again, that means a student athlete can practice, compete, and receive athletic scholarship their first year. They still have to complete 16 core courses, have at least a 2.2 core GPA, and then submit proof of graduation. Next, we have Division II partial qualifier. This is where that student athlete can receive athletic scholarship and practice their first year. They just cannot compete. And the only requirement for a Division II partial qualifier is that that student athlete has to submit proof of graduation to their Eligibility Center account. Now, Division III is unique in its own way. Division III schools determines their academic requirements, their admission requirements, and their financial aid. Another thing to remember, domestic student athletes, if you are wanting to compete at a Division III school, you do not have to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center, but we do still encourage to register with that free profile page account. International student athletes will need to register with that academic only or the amateurism only certification account, if they want to compete at a Division III school. Another thing to note for Division III, they do not provide athletic scholarship. So for student athletes who are competing at a Division III school, make sure you talk to the school or to the athletic compliance office, the admission office, and your coach that's recruiting you to see what scholarships are available to help pay for your Division III tuition. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Jansen, and he is going to talk about recruiting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivory. Yes, recruiting. It's a topic that I cover a lot as I travel around and speak to high school student athletes. Our first slide that we're going to talk about here are you being recruited? And I want you to know, as there are some options here, everybody's recruiting story is going to look a little bit different. I was fortunate enough to play a Division I sport, and everyone in my locker room had a different recruiting story. Some maybe started getting recruited in 9th grade. Others maybe had to go to a junior college. So everybody's recruiting story is going to look different. These are a couple ways that you could tell if you are, but are not limited to just these options. Next is the institutional request list. Again, this is another great resource to tell if you're being recruited. The best way that was explained to me, I will explain it to you. If the University of Florida is interested in John Doe, the University of Florida would reach out to the Eligibility Center. They would put John Doe on their institutional request list. That again gives them access to your transcripts, lets them know when you're going to be graduating, when you're planning on enrolling, and you have to be on an institutional request list in order to go to that university or that college. Another piece of the recruiting that you need to keep in mind as you are competing in the high school level are recruiting calendars. Colleges have what is called a recruiting calendar of when they can maybe come watch you play, when they can and cannot reach out to you. Again, I'm not going to go through everything that you see here on the screen, but the best way to find that your recruiting calendar for your sport and the division that you hope to play in is to go to on.ncaa.com/recruitcal, and it will break it down for when your sport that you hope to play is at one of these, either a dead or a quiet period. And it will break down when the coaches can reach out to you and when they can't reach out to you. As these coaches reach out to you, they're going to start inviting you to what are called official and unofficial visits. Some things that keep in mind as you attend these official and unofficials are just the differences, right? One of the biggest differences are what the university or college is going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for. Essentially, on an official visit, they're going to pay for just about everything. They're going to pay for your transportation to and from the airport. They're going to pay for your airline ticket. They're going to pay for your hotel and food. An unofficial visit is typically going to come out of your pocket. And so I encourage all student athletes, if you have the resources and you have the bandwidth, to attend as many official and unofficials as you can. It is a great way for you to meet the coaching staff and to see the university, to see what it's like as a day in the life of a student athlete at that particular university. And as you're on these unofficials, I can't stress this part enough, are to ask these important questions. Again, I know Ivory touched on it earlier, but again, not all scholarships are a full scholarship. So again, asking the question, will I receive a full or a partial scholarship? If I'm injured and can no longer compete, will my scholarship remain for the remainder of my time at that university? Again, there's a list of questions here. We're not going to go through all of them, but these are just important questions, not to be wowed by the universities as you're on these unofficial and official visits, but to ask the important questions. As we transition from questions that you should ask the coaches, we're going to talk about recruiting best practices. One of the best things that you can do is talk to your support system about what level of competition they think that you should aim for. Whether that's sitting down with your coach, your family, whatever that looks like for you, getting an idea of what schools you should be reaching out to, maybe sending emails and text messages to in order to aim for that level of competition. Use the interactive map that Ivory touched on earlier to locate a school that you could be interested in a geographic location. And then research your division and sports-specific recruiting periods that we just talked about. Other great practices. Once you sign up for either that free account or that certification account, you are going to get that NCAA ID. Make sure that you're including that on your social media. And if you're using a recruiting service, to add that number to those platforms. If possible, again, take those official and unofficial visits. Conduct yourself always in that positive manner in classes, practices, and games to make sure you are giving yourself the best chance to be recruited. Name, image, and likeness is a very hot topic right now. The best resource that you can do as a high school student athlete is contact your state's high school athletic association for current legislation, or if there's a school that is recruiting you or that you have committed to, contact that school's compliance office. Also, you can follow our Twitter, Instagram, check out our YouTube and Facebook for updates on name, image, and likeness. Next is the National Letter of Intent. I know Ivory has mentioned it prior to, but what is this National Letter of Intent? By signing this National Letter of Intent, you are agreeing to attend this Division I or Division II school for one academic year. This essentially ends your recruiting process as a high school student athlete. You've worked super hard on the field or in the court and in the classroom. That coach has seen that. They have offered you a scholarship, and this is you signing that scholarship and agreeing that I will attend that school for one academic year. With saying that, I know a lot of questions are about the transfer. That's a hot topic again within college athletics. We're not going to go into grave detail here, but again, my encouragement to you is understand the transfer rules, options, and potential consequences before choosing to transfer. Again, we have resources for that. We also have a great customer service team that you can ask these questions to, but always you can visit on.ncaa.com/transfer to make sure that you fully understand what you're getting into if you decide to transfer. And I'm going to pass it back over to Amber as she is going to wrap us up. Amber?
Thank you so much, Jansen. We understand this was a lot of information thrown your way. But again, this webinar is being recorded and we have a ton of resources that you can take away. So let's go over some of those. First, you're going to see a QR code on your screen. If you have it, have your cell phone out and ready because we have quite a few of these coming up. Go ahead and give this QR code a scan if you have any questions about the registration process that Ivory talked about earlier in this webinar. I know I've seen a few questions in the chat about the registration process, and we're going to get to those here in a minute. But this is a great resource for you and your family to sit and look over as you're registering with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Also on this slide, you're going to see our most comprehensive resource, the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. I use this guide to help answer questions that you and your family ask us on social media all of the time. So if you have a question, the answer is most likely going to be in the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. But if you're looking for something quick, something to give you and your family a brief overview of initial eligibility, that initial eligibility flyer there on your screen, that's the resource that you're going to want to click on. So again, you're going to get a slide deck, a PDF with all clickable links, but we're also putting all of these links in the chat so you can visit them there as well. We're going to now take a few questions, but before we get to those, again, if you have your phone next to you, scan this QR code. Please take our quick 2-minute survey and let us know how we're doing today. So first question up, I'm going to come to Jansen for you for this question. This question is, could you review the registration fees for a certification account?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. For domestic students, it's going to be $100, and for international students, it's $160. The thing to remember, this is a one-time fee. It is not reoccurring, and there's also fee waivers in place.
Thank you, Jansen. Yeah, and that amateurism only account that Ivory talked on specifically for international students wanting to go D3, that account's $70. So just adding that to the mix too. Jansen, I'm going to come back to you for this next question, if you don't mind. This one is, you mentioned my NCAA ID. Where do I find that?
So you're going to log in to your NCAA Eligibility Center account at eligibilitycenter.org. Your NCAA ID number is in the top right-hand corner, just below your name.
Thank you, Jansen. Ivory, I'm coming to you for this next question because I know Ivory competed in NCAA track and field, and she's going to know this answer. So Ivory, this one is, how do I get on a school's IRL?
Yeah, the only way to end up on an IRL is to have a college coach request your status from their athletic department. The athletic department then submits your name and your NCAA ID number, along with other athletes that they are recruiting to the NCAA. This means you will need to register with the NCAA and complete the necessary steps in order to get an NCAA ID before you can be placed on an IRL.
Thank you, Ivory. And I know one registration question that we get a lot on social media, and I've seen a few times here in the chat. This one, Ivory says, when do I need a certification account?
Students can register with a free profile page account, again, like I mentioned earlier, as young as 7th or 8th grade. In a perfect world, we would love for student athletes to register with that free profile page account and then transition to the right certification account once they have decided that they want to compete at a Division I or Division II school. Remember, your GPA starts in 9th grade. Once Division I or Division II college coaches begin reaching out, then they can transition that free profile page account into a certification account at any time.
Thank you, Ivory. And last one for you before I go to Jansen. This one is, I'm going to play Division III. Do I need to register?
Registration with the Eligibility Center is not required to play at a Division III school for domestic student athletes, but we still encourage student athletes that are competing at a Division III school who are domestic student athletes to register with a free profile page account. You'll receive regular communication from the EC about a number of different topics that will help you on your journey.
Thank you, Ivory. Jansen, I'm coming to you for this one. This question is, how do I get approved for a fee waiver and who can get one?
Absolutely. We never want money to stop a student athlete for playing in a college sport. So if you're unable to pay the registration fee for the NCAA Eligibility Center due to financial reasons, there is an option in the payment section of your Eligibility Center account to indicate you are eligible to receive a fee waiver. These examples of students that may receive a fee waiver, they've either had a free or reduced lunch, they have a free ACT, SAT. So again, making sure that you go to that payment section of your Eligibility Center account to submit the fee waiver and work with your school counselor as well.
Thank you, Jansen. Yeah, there's more criteria that Jansen mentions just a few of, so we'll put the rest of those in the chat so that way you can look at that on your own time and see if you do meet fee waiver criteria. And then the next slide that you're going to see on your screen, I warned you about the QR codes. We've got a few up, so if you have your phone, give these a scan. Follow the NCAA Eligibility Center on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and as of last year on YouTube. Next few questions that we've got, Ivory, I'm going to come to you for these. This question says, are the ACT and SAT required for all students this year?
The NCAA does not require test scores. However, remember, as we stated before, we do encourage student athletes to take the SAT and ACT because that college or university that they're wanting to attend or getting recruited by may require those test scores for admission purposes, class placement, and any scholarship purposes.
Thank you, Ivory. Coming back to you, this question says, can I upload my child's transcript to his account?
That's a great question. Students will need to have their school counselors upload their high school transcripts to their accounts. So again, this is another reason, a great reason why student athletes need to know who their school counselors are, because this is one of the services that they will provide.
Thank you. I'm going to do one more and then give you a break and go to Jansen. Ivory, this question is, I changed high schools. You only need one transcript from my current high school. Is that right?
That's also a very good question. The Eligibility Center needs a transcript from every high school that you attend. So please ask the school counselor at each high school that you attended to upload your high school transcript to your Eligibility Center account.
Thank you. Jansen, coming to you. Here we go. This question is, I'm taking an English course at my local community college. Will this be used in my NCAA certification?
Yes, absolutely. As long as it's a 100 level or higher course, and the transcript must provide a grade and credit for that particular course.
Thank you, Jansen. And I see we've got quite a few questions in the chat. If you have a question, please use that Q&A function, submit your question to our chat. If we don't get to it today, we do have people online from the EC staff who are really excited about you being here today and are excited to help you and answer your questions directly via chat. So we'll take 3 more. Jansen, I'm coming to you again for this next one because you touched on official and unofficial visits. This one is, do I have to be certified to go on an official visit?
I think language is super important here. You do not have to be certified, but you do have to have a certification account to go on an official visit.
Yeah, and as of just not too long ago, that's only for Division I official visits as well. As of just not too long ago, Division II official visits, all you have to have is a free profile page account. Is that right, Ivory? Seeing you shaking your head? Yes, yes.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, 2 more questions here. This next question, Jansen, I'm going to come to you. This question is, can you explain what a dead period is?
Yeah, so a college coach may not have any face-to-face contact with the student athlete or the student athlete's family on or off the college's campus. However, the coach can still call or write the student athlete or family. Remember to visit on.ncaa.com/recruitcal, and it will break down all of these other terms for you.
Thank you. And last question that we're going to take live. But again, if you have more, just use that Q&A function and ask us your questions directly. Ivory, coming to you for this one. What if my coach leaves after I sign an NLI, a National Letter of Intent?
That's a very good question, and one we get often on the road. If a college coach resigns or leaves prior to the student athlete's full-time enrollment, practice, or competition, whichever comes first, the student athlete can request a release, and that school does have to grant it.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for answering those questions. Again, thank you all for joining us today. As we mentioned before, we will email a link to today's webinar to everyone that registered in the coming days. So if you have 2 teammates that you think would benefit from hearing this webinar, you can just send this on their way as well. Again, my name is Amber Viles, and on behalf of myself, Ivory Long, and Jansen Raymond, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to support you and your family as things change and questions arise. Thank you, and be safe.